What's up? Let's expand on the previous video. But the first thing I want to do is apologize. I made gross generalizations, and I hate myself when I do stuff like that. I'm starting to think I should outline what I'm going to say before I make a video. I assume too much. I assume that people are, they're going to understand what I mean by, and I can't do that. And it's not your fault. It's not because I'm smarter than you or you're stupid. It's just that I make the mistake of assuming that someone automatically knows what I'm talking about, and that's my bad. Democrats aren't all bad. Okay, not all Democrats want to spend all the money that exists. All right, not all Democrats want to put us in debt, and not all Democrats have. Okay? Let me make that perfectly clear, and let me apologize to my Democratic folks out there and to the people that brought up concerns with this statement. Because I like Democrats and I don't want to alienate them from acting like an ass, which I was when I made that generalization. Alright? But let's talk about some more of the details here. Let's talk about foreign policy. And I want to show you a pattern that becomes quite clear. Okay? And there's a great thing to do it on. Wikipedia has this great list of the presidents down with all their portraits, their numbers, and it's color-coded and has their party and the years they were in office, so on and so forth. So I want to show you some of the patterns, all right, and show you when the patterns change and what's going on, okay? In my opinion, what the fuck is the deal with these particular situations, okay? Because certain things were brought up, and I want to address them because they're important, all right? And one more thing. Maybe I am reaching too much to claim that what I think is, quote, classical republicanism. But from the ideas that really shape conservative politics, not social conservative politics, just conservative politics, I think that's the classic Republican position. Whether or not that is panned out is up for debate, and that was my mistake. So I want to apologize for that. Everyone makes mistakes, and thank you for the people that pointed that shit out, because if somebody doesn't point it, I might not notice it. You know what I'm saying? So let's look here. Let's start with, of course, Abraham Lincoln, which is the first of what is really the Republican Party. There's different forms of it. Remember, back in the day, we had a lot of different political parties. Okay, John Adams, a Federalist. Let's see, Thomas Jefferson, Democratic Republican. Okay, that's what we had. We had Democratic Republicans. John Quincy Adams was a, quote, national Republican. Okay, then we have Democrats. Andrew Jackson was the first Democrat elected. Okay, who ran as a, quote, Democrat. Right, and that was in 1829. Then you've got Martin Van Buren, who's a Democrat right after Andrew Jackson. William Henry Harrison is a Whig. John Tyler was a Whig, and then sort of switched out of his party. James K. Polk, Democrat. Zachary Taylor, Whig. Millard Fillmore, Whig. Franklin Pierce, Democrat. James Buchanan, Democrat. Abraham Lincoln, Republican. National Union was the name of the party during the election that happened during the Civil War in 1864, right? Yes, 1864. So this is when we start to see the pattern here, okay? Now, as far as war is concerned, all right, is it fair to blame the Democrats, old school Democrats? Obviously, we cannot compare Democrats in 1857 to the Democratic Party now, so don't get your panties up in a bunch, okay? Can we ascribe some blame to the Democrats for the Civil War? I believe yes. Obviously, not all of it. Okay. Abraham Lincoln was fucked. Okay, he got fucked. All right. You couldn't have picked a worse time. There's no one would want. I wouldn't want to be the fucking president during the Civil War. Okay, nobody would want that. But it was the previous two presidents, and especially James Buchanan and his pandering to Southern slavery people that really made the situation worse. Okay. Now, as people pointed out, Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. He suspended a bunch of things, right? This is true, okay? But I think it's fair to make the argument that you cannot really compare peace times or even regular war times with Civil War times, okay? If I had been in his situation, I might have done the same thing. There was an there was a war going. There was a revolt, all right? There were strikes against drafting. Of course, the draft system was fucked, but it was fucked on both sides, the Confederates and the Union. So I think it's kind of a stretch to claim that Abraham Lincoln does not support personal freedom because he suspended habeas corpus and so on and so forth. Okay, situation was extremely dicey. Now, as far as the slaves are concerned, did Abraham Lincoln go into the presidency with the intention of freeing the slaves? No. If he could have restored the Union without freeing the slaves, would he have? Probably. Okay, but the fact remains that he did. All right. So this is the first Republican. Okay. Then, after he was killed as vice president, Andrew Johnson, vice president, secretary, whatever. Anyway, Andrew Johnson. I get my shit fucked up. The next Republican was Ulysses S. Grant, which is not a good example of a good president, but he really kind of got forced into the situation. I don't think he ever really wanted to be in politics. All right, Grant was a drunk. Grant was not a happy man. We have this tendency to want to elect generals. I don't know why. Sometimes it works out okay with Eisenhower. Sometimes it doesn't work out well at all with Grant. And he got fucked, and by the time he got out of office, people didn't like him very much. Then we have a whole string of Republicans, all right? We have Rutherford B. Hayes, and this is all during Reconstruction, okay? We got James Garfield, of course, he was assassinated, Chester A. Arthur. The next Democrat is Grover Cleveland, and then he skips, because he gets reelected another term, is Benjamin Harrison and Grover Cleveland. Then we got William McKinley. We got Theodore Roosevelt, Republican. I like Theodore Roosevelt. Now, he expanded the federal government in some ways, but I think he expanded them in the right ways, and he did a lot of very important things. He managed to get us involved in other countries without fighting wars with them. Of course, it walk softly and carry a big stick, which I agree with, and that's a precedent that's set down by Teddy Roosevelt. We got William Howard Taft, who I think is very underrated. I like Taft. All right, now we can see. Now what we're going to see is the pattern I want to show you. Okay. After Taft, we have Woodrow Wilson. That's 1913 and 1921. What happened between 1913 and 1921? What was going on? Okay. First World War. All right. I've talked about the First World War before a little bit. Okay. The First World War was avoidable. Okay. We were doing illegal things. All right. I think that Germany, had I been in Germany's situation, I would have felt completely justified with attacking American shipping because we were breaking the rules of neutrality under Woodrow Wilson. All right. But what else happened between 1913 and 1921? What's the single most important thing, really, in terms of the way that the federal government and the way that the economy functions that happened between 1913 and 1921? That is the Federal Reserve. Okay, the Federal Reserve was enacted under Woodrow Wilson. Okay, here's where we're going to see how the federal government expands and contracts depending on what party is in charge. So that's Woodrow Wilson. Now we have 3 Republicans in a row. This is Warren G. Harding, this is Calvin Coolidge, and Herbert Hoover. Harding and Coolidge presided over they got lucky. All right, there was an economic boom. It was going good for them. Didn't do anything about the Federal Reserve, unfortunately. But then again, no one has, neither Republicans or Democrats. All right. Then we got Herbert Hoover. All right, which a bunch of people who don't understand shit want to blame him for stuff that happened, the Great Depression. Okay, and I think that it's really unfair the way that Herbert Hoover has been treated. All right. The Great Depression, what happened there isn't exactly what happened this last time with this recession, but it's very similar. And it happened just because of the way that we changed the way that the economy works, and we started introducing credit. Right, the single biggest factor for individual loss was credit, because people could get credit, and they were buying shit on credit, and they didn't have the money. And so when the stock market failed, when it fell, that wasn't what caused the Great Depression. It was the banks recalling the loans that they had made that caused the Great Depression. And nobody had any fucking money. The banks didn't have any money, the people didn't have any money to pay the banks, and everything was fucked. Okay, that's what went down. Alright, so that was Herbert Hoover. Then we have Franklin D. Roosevelt. Of course, the greatly loved president, fine, okay. He expanded the federal government more than any president really ever, at least within the last 100 years. Were some of the things that he did necessary? Yes. But things that should have been should have been temporary became permanent. All right, Social Security, things like this. And the problem with a system like Social Security is it's not sustainable. All right, that's not good solution. All right, but that's what happened. And of course, we were involved in the Second World War, which is another thing that I believe was avoidable. Did we purposely create a situation to get into the war? No. But what I think happened is that our entangling alliances is what got us involved in that shit. Our unwavering support of England, no matter what, is what got us involved in that. And really, the Second World War was a giant clusterfuck. We should have had nothing to do with it, as far as that goes. Now, there's an argument that can be made about the Japanese, whether or not it was our actions in stopping shipments of oil and scrap metal and whatnot that really caused them to get into this. I think that contributed to it, but I don't know. The Japanese Empire was so ballsy that I think they would have attacked us eventually anyway. But our own war with Germany was unnecessary. We didn't go to war with Germany to stop the Holocaust. We didn't know about that, okay? We didn't go to war with Germany with some sort of great, crusade idea. That wasn't really the point, okay? And then we have Harry S. Truman, which of course was Franklin Roosevelt's vice president. All right. Now we get into Cold War years, right? And now we can see the pattern some more. We got Dwight Eisenhower, but there's one thing that needs to be mentioned about the Cold War era. Okay, the Cold War era was marked by unlimited spending by all parties when it came to certain things. That's why the fucking deficits were so high. We spent a lot of money. Okay, a lot of money. Money that we didn't have, but we thought that the idea was it had to be done. The communists were going to come and get us. That was a mentality. That's what went on with both parties, okay? So we have Dwight Eisenhower. Then we have, of course, John F. Kennedy, the most overrated president in the history of the United States. I'm not a fan of John F. Kennedy, all right? I'm sorry that he got killed. That sucks, all right? I don't want to see anybody get assassinated, man. But he's not that great, okay? The thing that everyone points to is the Cuban Missile Crisis, guess what? All right, it wasn't some great statesmanship that got us out of that. It was basically we played chicken with the Soviet Union, and they blinked first. And we started that crisis by putting missiles in Turkey. That's what started it. We did that. Okay. I refuse to give John F. Kennedy more credit than he deserves. Okay. And of course, what else did John F. Kennedy do? All right. He got us more involved in Vietnam. Now we had some advisors, but it wasn't until John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson that we actually got involved. Okay. And that's when we got into the Vietnam War, which is by far the most unpopular war in the history of the United States. And that was started and mostly presided over by Democrats, okay, Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson did good things, all right, or at least he was good intention. Equal rights legislation, whatnot. So you can't really hate on him for that. But our involvement in Vietnam is deplorable, and it was unnecessary. And of course, we lost that war. I don't care what you say. Technically, we didn't lose, but it was not our policy that prevailed. It was the Soviet Union's. Okay, we lost that war. Then we have Richard Nixon, who I actually kind of like, and I know that's a everyone's like, oh my God, Richard Nixon. Yeah, okay, fine, he spied on the whatever. Okay, I don't think that makes him the worst person on the planet. Of course, he shouldn't have did that. All right, and he deserved to be impeached for that. He deserved what happened to him. But besides that, he was a pretty good president as far as foreign relations are concerned. Okay, the greatest increase in good relations with the Soviet Union was Richard Nixon, opening up relations with China, Richard Nixon, so on and so forth. Unfortunately, he helped increase the war on drugs, but everyone's done that, and the war on drugs in 1969 was really more about the counterculture and what was seen as a brewing revolution than really anything to do with your personal freedom to consume drugs. Okay. Then Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, and now is when the shit starts to change. Okay, this is when the shit gets fucked up. Ronald Reagan. Now, I don't like Ronald Reagan. Okay, not surprising. I don't know who does like Ronald Reagan. He wasn't that great of a president. I don't know what he thought his qualification was for it. And it really pisses me off to see him get the credit for bringing down the Soviet Union. Every time I hear someone say that, I want to freak the fuck out. Okay, it just pisses me off because that's just not what went down. All right, the Soviet Union, their form of communism was a self-destructive system. It was going to fail sooner or later. Could it be argued that our increase in defense spending that forced them to increase their defense spending helped speed their way towards becoming completely bankrupt? Sure, okay. But if that hadn't happened, the Soviet Union would have collapsed sooner or later anyway. All right. And of course we have George H.W. Bush and the Gulf War, which was a well-done war. I mean, you can't really ask for a war to get to be waged much better than that. Limited casualties on our side. I mean, so small that they were almost unheard of. The enemy was decimated. And the good thing is that we didn't go past what we stated we were going to do. I don't think we should have even been involved in the first place, but we didn't invade Iraq. All right? Some people wanted that to happen. We didn't do that. There was a lot of push, a lot of call for go get Saddam Hussein. That didn't happen, which was the right thing to do because that was not our fucking business. Frankly, I don't think it was Kuwait's business either. I think the Arabs would have handled that situation on their own anyway, without that. Alright. And of course, another thing to mention about Ronald Reagan is he supported the war between Iran and Iraq. Okay? And then we come to Bill Clinton, who I like Bill Clinton, okay? And there's a lot of talk about how he presided. There was there was a surplus in the budget. Great, okay? But there's something to understand about Bill Clinton's presidency and why so much less money had to be spent, okay? Look at the year, 93 to 2001, okay? What was different between 1989 and 1993, okay? The Cold War. The Cold War is over in 1993. That's a huge chunk of our money, okay? A huge amount of money that was being spent, a titanic amount of money that was being spent on defense and research and development and creation of new weapon systems, whatever, support of anti-communist governments and whatnot, all these things, and this sort of went away. And I think that's a large part of the reason that Bill Clinton had a surplus. I don't think it's because he was particularly brilliant economically. I think it was just because he got lucky in the situation he was in. With that being said, I like Bill Clinton. He managed not to piss too many people off, though he did get us involved in some shit that was none of our business. Serbia, Yugoslavia, you got that. Of course, you had what happened in Mogadishu. Was that in '92? Might have been under George Bush. Either way, we had that. Okay, and then we go, of course, to our good friend George W. Bush. And this is really where we see the divide. This is the first president that really completely flipped everything about the Republican Party. I mean, it could be argued about Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush. I think it could be argued well, George H.W. Bush, that is. But George W. Bush really flipped it, okay? And he got elected on a lie, right? I'm not talking about the election results. I'm talking about the fact that he promised to run on a humble foreign policy, so on and so forth. And people try to defend what happened because of 9/11. Yeah, 9/11 was fucked up. Do I think that we needed to go to Afghanistan? I'm still kind of iffy on that. You know what I'm saying? I still don't know how I feel about that. But I can tell you 100% right now that we should have never gone to Iraq. Okay, I'm really sick of all the arguments for it. They piss me off. Weapons of mass destruction, yeah, whatever, okay, first of all, he didn't have them. Even if he did, Saddam Hussein was not going to sell weapons of mass destruction to anybody that was going to attack us. You want to know why? Because he didn't want to have anything to do with us, because he knew that if he pissed us off too much, he was going to die, which is exactly what happened, right? I don't think he would have ever been any danger to us at all. His country was in ruins. His military was destroyed. It never recovered. We thought it recovered. It never did. He was no threat to anyone except his own people, and frankly, that's their fucking problem, okay? We do not have the time. We cannot make ourselves feel like we're responsible for protecting everybody on the planet, okay? We can't do that. I don't care how noble you think it is, we can't do that. And frankly, all right, fine, yeah, they had it kind of tough under Saddam Hussein. He did some fucked up shit. Are their lives better? I mean, what are you going to say? And it fucked up everything for us, okay? Now, I don't doubt that George W. Bush had good intentions, okay? This is where I split from the people that hate George W. Bush. I hate George W. Bush, the president, and the things that he did, but people seem to think of him as this evil character, and frankly, I don't think he was smart enough to be evil. I think that he had good intentions. I think that he really did think that he was doing the right thing, that he was going to help these people in Iraq, and by helping them and showing that the Americans could help the Iraqis, that all the other Arab states would say, hey, look, the Americans are great, look how much they help these people. I think he really thought that, but he didn't think it through enough. All right, I don't think he did this shit on purpose just to be a douche, okay? But with that being said, George W. Bush is a complete opposite of classical conservative politics. All right, big spending, Homeland Security. He expanded the government more than anybody since Lyndon Johnson. 2 wars, constantly trying to interfere in private lives, trying to call for amendment to the Constitution to ban gay marriage, all this stupid shit. All right. And then, of course, you have our current president, Barack Obama, who is a classic big spending liberal. All right, which there's not necessarily, I'm not saying that as an insult. That's just what he is. I just disagree with his methods. I don't think that the amount of money he spent on this bailout is the right solution to the problem. Could it pan out that the money that he spent on this bailout and on all that money, could it pan out that it fixes or helps the economy rebound? Sure. Okay, and that seems like a good thing, right? And it is a good thing. But and this is the problem that I have with this kind of politics, this kind of classic Democratic politics, is you're not thinking far enough ahead, right? That money that was spent is going to come back to bite us in the ass. Okay, so I hope that made some of the things I was saying a little bit more clear while we looked at this pattern, all right? So that's what was going on with that. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed your history lesson. All right? Because every once in a while somebody is be like, can you do like a history video? I'm like, what the fuck? What am I supposed to do? But I guess that sort of qualifies, all right? And so, like I said, I apologize for the generalizations I made. I hope I made myself a little bit more clear. If I did not make myself a little bit more clear, tell me that, all right? And I'll attempt to clarify some more. Because it doesn't help anybody, especially not me, because I have to listen to the shit to be unclear, right? So, I'll see you folks later.